For those of you who haven't met me, my name's Brian Gerrish, and I work with a group of volunteers in Plymouth to produce a newspaper called the UK Column. And in producing that paper, we first began to hear about what was happening to children in this country. And as I've said on several occasions, initially it was difficult to believe what we were being told until people arrived with evidence, ring files full of paperwork, recorded telephone conversations and court transcripts in particular, which began to make us realise that what we were being told was in fact true. And we continued to work to learn more about what was happening, and eventually we got to the stage where we knew something had to be done. Now, I've talked a little bit on this subject. I do not claim to be an expert. I can only tell you what I know. But what we found out very quickly was that a large number of people had been working to expose child abuse and child snatching by the state over a large number of years. And therefore we decided it would be a good opportunity to try and bring some of that expertise together. And that's the purpose of today. So we've got a good lineup of speakers, which I'll show you very shortly. And our overall objective is that the audience will learn from each other, because amongst us today we've got people who have suffered, have lost their children, or have had children abused. We've got people who've tried very hard over a number of years to help those families. So we're all learning from each other. But also by recording what we're talking about, and ultimately we will produce a DVD, we want the evidence of today to start going out to the general public. Now, we want to remain very cool and calm about this. There are some very emotive subjects, and some of the topics that I'm sure are going to be discussed can be quite distressing. But we are an adult audience, and we need to deal with things in real terms. And what we cannot do is not discuss something because it's not very nice. If we are to protect our children, we are going to have to look at some very dark subjects, and then we're going to have to do something about it. And by the end of today, we want to propose to you all some different ways that we might actually move forward. And part of this is based on what we've been doing with other conferences. So a few little slides from me to start off with, and then I'll introduce you to our first speaker. But on the opening slide, I've just put a couple of little things. On the left-hand side, that's the front cover from a BBC document, which is talking about families wanted. And if I was to show you the actual thing, I don't have time, but it's a real document, I assure you. Inside you'll find photographs of children, and the BBC was carefully trying to help those children find families for adoption. The only thing that made us a little bit nervous about it is when we said, do the parents actually want these children adopted, the BBC became remarkably squeamish, because they didn't know the circumstances in which the children had been taken, but they were happy to advertise them with photographs as if you were going to buy a puppy. And this, I believe, is deeply worrying, that we've now got the BBC starting to get involved in what happens to children. The man in the middle is typical. He's a faceless judge. And whilst many of us may have believed for quite some time that the judiciary were above reproach, what we are starting to find more and more is that massive corruption is there within the judiciary, and that may involve drugs, money, power, women, young men, and we're very sure that it's also starting to include paedophilia. So we need to start thinking about the way the courts operate, because the family courts are inherently secret, and therefore if we had an official who was warped in their behaviour, they would simply be able to act in their own best interests. And the other building over here is Portcullis House, which is the main office centre now for Westminster, And my point is that we don't know what goes on in this building, but we do know that more and more regulations are coming out to do with social services and children, and it is making the state, it's constantly giving the state more powers in taking children. Is it going to work? Right, this is the important thing. I'd like to thank Jane Webb and Penny Pullin, who have both put in a huge amount of effort to actually get the hall today and make the thing happen. We've done it at a distance. They've put in all the hard work. And the buffet food for you today has all been provided by Jane with help from some of her personal friends. So I hope at the right time you'll give her a big thank you for that. Now this is the main programme. I'm only going to speak just for 5 minutes. Ian Joseph, who's written a book all about forced adoption and has been working to help families for many years, will get the first slot. We should have had a gentleman called Jack Frost here, who's also been very active and written books, including The Gulag of the Family Courts, which says it all. If he hasn't arrived in time, we'll change some of the orders. But basically, the two main speakers, a short 30 minutes for buffet lunch, and I understand that we've got 2 people who would like to play some music for us in that period. So well done, and we'll be delighted. And then after lunch, the key bit, an hour's open microphone, so that people with a story to tell can come forward if they wish and tell us about their personal experience. I don't know how many people we've got, so I will try and find that out. But I am going to ask you just to stick to brief bullet facts, because this is only the start today. Don't feel that you've got to tell all of your story today. We just need to get the bullet points out, and then we will be doing other things in the future. This afternoon, we expect a gentleman called Kevin Annette, who's been doing a lot of work in Canada. He's suffered a great deal, exposing massive abuse of Canadian Indian children. And we'll end with a session by Robert Green, who will tell you about Holly Gregg. Some of you may know about that already. I'm going to do my best to chair and to sum up at the end of the day. We don't want you to go away thinking it was a good day, but that's the end of it. We want you to go away thinking, yes, there are some new ways to tackle this problem. And I will tell you now, and I will keep saying, the easiest way to deal with this problem is to talk about it and use the real words and discuss the real events. But you will lose some friends, and I will say to you that doesn't matter, because they weren't real friends in the first place. If we do not protect our children, we do not have a future. It doesn't matter what the government's talking about, the economy, business, it does not matter if we as parents can't protect the children.